I will stop my recording and check that it all worked. I did have a little bit of follow-up that I wanted to go through first, which is just to say that I think both of us have been quite busy away from Spinnerproof, and I thought that was worth mentioning for a second. So you've been streaming in collaboration with Mr. Psycho.
Yeah.
Or in collaboration to a degree. He's been around a bit. You're kind of sharing your KSP save around. I, meanwhile, have been guesting on everything that I can. So I've done an ESC spot, which contains me telling a story that I'm probably going to regret telling, but damn it, it's worth hearing. And then also, just a couple of days ago, I was going to say just yesterday, not knowing what day it is today, this weekend, basically, we recorded a quiz for World of Woodrow, and it was a time. It was a wild ride where a lot happened, and I cannot wait to listen to it back. So, if those things are out by the time this episode goes out, probably not, because we're actually going to be getting this done probably quite quickly. But if they are, they'll be in the show notes.
Whoa. What is this we going to get this done quickly?
Well, the hold up the last few times on release has been me getting show notes done and getting release ready.
It might be me this time. I might be slow to edit. You don't know.
Yeah, but you won't be, will you? You're too bored. And if you now delay yourself just to spite me...
I've got Kerbal Space Program to play, man. You know, God knows how much of my time that's going to consume.
Genuinely, which one's worse for your RSI, editing or KSP?
They're equally bad.
Damn.
Although KSP absorbs more time, so maybe KSP is the worst one.
That was my clunky, unplanned follow-up. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Is this the first recording of Retuncti that we've done not face-to-face?
I think so, yes. It's also the first one we've done in 11 months.
Damn it, we didn't make it a year.
Not quite. We started this on the 10th of February 2019.
Wow.
And I think the last episode we did was maybe the 7th of May, I want to say.
Wow, yeah.
This isn't amazing retention. This is, I looked at it half an hour ago and have already basically forgotten.
No, we're going to call it amazing retention. Some phenomenal recall there from Ryan.
So yeah, February 10th, February 24th, March 29th, May 7th. And then we did BattleBots Bingo a month later.
Wow. How pathetic.
It's a lot of work, Sam.
A lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
A lot of work for not a lot of output so far.
I mean, perhaps I'm ashamed to say it's the most popular thing we've ever not done. It's like,
oh, dear.
you know what we should do?
What's that?
We should put out a tweet today that we're recording Retuncti. And then tomorrow morning, with it being April Fool's Day, we should tweet out an image of your editing software with the timeline on like 7 hours.
Yeah.
As if we've just done the whole thing.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
And then no one will notice because no one pays attention to our Twitter, not even me.
Not even you.
I don't get Twitter notifications anymore. It's really annoying. It makes me forget that Twitter exists.
I mean, that's probably a good thing in the grand scheme of things.
Not when you're trying to manage a Twitter account. It was even worse when I was trying to manage two.
Well, you know, I keep enough of an eye on our Twitter account, I think.
Well, more than I do, yeah.
Well, there we go. That's fine then. You can save your mental health and just not look at Twitter.
But I'm so bored. I've got to look at everything.
Oh dear.
To be fair, our Twitter is a safe haven from the world because it's all just robot stuff. Or mostly robot stuff. If I'm going to look at any of the Twitter accounts I have, it'll be that one.
It's mostly robot stuff until Noel Sharkey starts talking about Doomsday.
Do we follow Noel Sharkey?
Yes.
I'm going to fix that. I've become dissatisfied with Noel Sharkey's output.
Oh dear.
If only it gave you a reason for unfollowing.
Too much Doomsday tweeting.
Unfollowed. There we go. We're all sorted.
Brutal. We are going to get back to Retuncti. I'm looking at the notes that Ryan has spent an insane amount of time working on. And for that, I am very grateful. And we shall make good use of them right now.
The only problem I've currently got is that I've spent a lot of time making these notes and no time remembering how we do Retuncti.
Oh, I have no idea. It will be a journey of discovery that we can go through together.
So, here's where I'm at. We've got 13 more three-way melees to go in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
The system for three-ways, to the best of my knowledge, and if you want to get the rules up to sort of fact-check what I'm saying, that could be really good right now, because I don't have the laptop power to open so many things at once. As I understand it, our system is that we've got to eliminate one outright, and then do the odds between the other two, still accounting for the presence of the other robot. That's the system we had in place. That's the system we're sticking with. We're on the 14-sided die with the 7 numbers. So the old 3 and 3, that's long gone, that's dead and buried. And other rules that I will remember as we go. One thing we got to do better on, because as I listened through some old episodes, we often forgot to do our versioning. So we're going to have to be a little hotter on the versioning, I feel. But apart from that...
I mean, we could be honest with ourselves. We're probably going to continue to forget to talk about the versioning. We'll do our best.
We are promising perfection from here on out. There are some times in our notes where I've kind of made an executive decision on versioning.
That's fine.
And I will try to be honest about that as we go.
Right then, I've found the rules for the procedure for three-way melees. I think you're right, I think you're right. One robot is eliminated from contention, and a roll takes place between the remaining two, taking into account the influence of the third robot.
Wow, I even vaguely remembered the wording that I used last time. Or, more precisely, probably just expressed the same idea in roughly the same way.
Yeah.
So, are we ready to begin?
Let us begin.
Oh, last thing to note, actually. Since this started before the 2019 season...
Oh, God, yeah.
Anything that happened in the 2019 season is irrelevant, and that is very, very relevant to the first robot.
Oh, yeah. It's going to just get harder and harder to deal with that bit of it. Yep.
So first up, we have Witch Doctor versus Lucky versus Shockwave. This will be taking place in the BattleBots arena, because Witch Doctor is the first named robot, and therefore the home team.
Awesome.
So, Witch Doctor, eh?
Witch Doctor. I mean, this is a very disappointing robot. Never really performs as well as you'd hope it would.
I still stand by everything I said about it being overrated up to this point. I really do. And having the stats in front of me just helps with that. Now, this is a point, by the way, where I've immediately discounted the older version because I didn't want to bother writing notes about it.
Okay.
It only had like 3 fights. The 2018 and 2019 version, clearly superior to the original. Are you happy with that decision I've made?
Wait, so can we... I'm confused. What was the most recent tournament we saw it in? That was the 2019 season, wasn't it?
Yes, the one that... Oh.
So we can't consider that.
Have I made a massive screw-up?
I mean, your notes say...
Oh, no. Oh, you know what? I've done this in multiple places.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Not even one robot in.
So much time and effort.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, dear.
What are we going to do?
Oh, dear. It's fine. We can just ignore this. This is eminently fixable. It's just the time loss on my part. The amount of my life over the past week that's gone into writing these things. And I'm going to say that a good 20% of it I didn't need to do.
Brutal, yeah. You've got 2019 information for Lucky as well.
I've got 2019 information for a lot of robots, Sam. A lot of robots.
I mean, are you predicting the future here? Is that what's happening? Are you secretly a Time Lord?
I'm just a very disappointed man right now.
All right then, we got to ignore a good chunk of your hard work.
It's okay. I'll just edit on the fly. Here we go. I mean, it helps support my point more than having the 29 information would, because with the 2019 fights included, I had this version of Witch Doctor down at 10 wins and 3 losses. But if we only take 2018 into account, suddenly it's just 3 wins and 2 losses, which makes it decidedly overrated at this point.
It was very sad just watching you just then delete a big chunk of your work.
Oh, it was sad to watch, was it? I'm glad it was sad to watch. If we include the 2016 version just as an overall history of Witch Doctor, it actually becomes an even record, I think. So 4 wins, 4 losses. Can't believe this, Sam. Cannot believe this. And this stays in. This is my fault.
As if I'd edit it out anyway.
So in that case, I've made an executive decision that we're doing the 2018 version of Witch Doctor.
Fine. Sold.
With its 3 wins and 2 losses. I maintain, as I've maintained all along, that those wins are some pretty soft wins. You got Ultimo Destructo in its flipper form, which just kind of broke in half. You've got Overhaul, which I love, but hasn't really won a great deal of fights generally. You've got Blacksmith there, which is a very hardy robot and took it to a judge's decision, but he's very unlikely to win a decision. And then you've got the losses. The losses are completely forgivable. Yeti and Minotaur, both big hitters, fair enough.
Yeah, I agree. I still like it though.
Witch Doctor has killed my flow. Should we move on to Lucky?
Let's move on to Lucky, which also contains information about his 2019 season.
I feel like we should take a few minutes for me to go through and fix these, or else it's just going to be a nightmare.
Do that if you want, yeah, I don't mind.
Cut! And we're back! All my mistakes have been fixed, not just in the document, but life in general, and I'm now a complete person.
Splendid.
Lucky is a robot that I want to have lots of lovely things to say about. But because I'm sat with its competitive record in front of me, that's made a lot harder, so I might just not look at it. Just think about what a beautiful flipper design it is.
Now, is this a 4-bar punch bot? I can't remember what years it's sort of had that configuration. Does it always have that?
It's had that for all of its appearances. It also had that in its old Robo Games guys as Ziggy.
So I can enjoy the punch bot nature of it then, and that's okay.
Of course. What we can't enjoy is the slew of losses that it's had. Although it did have a good run in the Desperado in 2018.
This is where your capacity to remember all this stuff is going to vastly outdo mine.
You see, I'm conflicted now because I have a capacity to remember things, but I'm also second guessing every single thing I'm now remembering because it might have been in the wrong season.
Welcome to my world.
Which Desperado was it in? Am I sure that wasn't 2019?
I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say about Lucky. This is the problem. I've forgotten what kind of stuff do we normally say. Lucky for me is a robot that I love the idea of it, right? Like I love the idea of it. It looks like a nice, sturdy robot, and it's always faintly disappointing the way that it performs. I always feel like it should be able to do a lot better than it does.
I think with Lucky, you've got a robot with some very strong strengths and some very weak weaknesses. If you look at the record it's done very well against horizontals. The Gigabyte fight in the Desperado was fantastic. They lump that big wedge on the front, they tank some big hits, and then the weapon can get in effectively when the opponent is spun down or their weapon is broken. Similar story with the Gemini fight, but obviously they had to worry less about the weapons because they're lighter. The Son of Waiachi fight, it lost, but put up a great fight. The fights where it's really struggled have been against Verts. So the loss to Yeti, the loss to Lockjaw, the loss to Reality. And I think a couple of the losses it's had as well, I can't necessarily remember specifically which ones these are, but there have been times where they've had some quite random seeming failures on drive. They also had that bizarre fight where they decided to come out with just the front wheels, which was a glorious decision, as we all know. But I wouldn't say it's a consistent disappointment. It's had disappointing fights where it's come out just not worked properly. But the Beta fight, for example, that's an absolute classic where they both put on a good show. And they did it with their weapon not working for half of it. When the weapon worked, it worked really well. And I think, if nothing else, it's been a great asset to the show just by being a different style of flipper. And it doesn't suffer the issue that a lot of flippers have against Verts, where one hit to the front lip basically neuters them for the entire fight. They have that ability to kind of hide the weapon back. Okay, whatever wedge setup they're running might take damage, but that's a lot better than the whole weapon being damaged.
I feel like one of the sort of problems with Lucky is that it seems to be right on the edge of the weight limit, because they often come out with only one of those like front wedgelet things, don't they? Or when they've done things with it where they're missing the rear drive wheels and stuff. I sort of presume that's a weight consideration and stuff. So I sort of wonder if they could sort of like, this is where I'm going to tell experienced robot builders how to improve their robot. But like if they could regain some weight so they didn't have to make the choice about the front ends and stuff like that.
The thing is, isn't everybody on the edge of the weight limit?
everyone is on the edge of the weight limit, and everyone, obviously, you have to make compromises for weight at some point. I just feel like Lucky makes the wrong compromises.
I feel like Lucky is a more configurable robot than a lot of its opponents, and the team perhaps are just more willing to go with unusual and especially asymmetrical setups. I'm sure there have been times where if it was like Lockjaw or Hypershock have come out with just one fork, for example, for exactly the same reason. And I think we only notice it if it goes wrong.
I don't know. Maybe this is, maybe you're right. Maybe this is just some kind of one of the many forms of bias in the world. But it feels like they come out with these sort of asymmetric setups more often. Like, more often than not, I feel like they only have one of the front wedgelet things on there.
In a sense, that's quite a clever approach, though. If you're facing for example, a horizontal that you know the direction they're going to be spinning in, maybe you do only really need one of those. And maybe that does allow you to put something else on that gives you another strategic option. I think the issue that Lucky maybe has in that respect is that they're adapting more to the opponent at the expense of their own strengths, which is something that I think modularity brings as a danger for all teams. We've kind of seen that with Bronco at times, I feel, as well. Especially with their sort of side armour setups that have been supposed to, neutralise the verts and have actually just made it easier for them to get under. Where actually going out in their stock configuration would have been better, but because there's that sense among teams that they need to be prepared for anything, I think they do just throw everything at changing rather than going, here's our robot, it works really well, let's see how we do.
I think this is sort of touching on a conversation that we often have when considering setups that we use in our Beetle weights, where you spend a lot of time considering all possible opponents and sort of going, well, we've got a wedge for this and forks for this kind of stuff and a different wedge for this setup and stuff. Whereas I think I tend towards wanting to just have like a setup that is reliable and works reasonably well for everything, rather than sort of getting really caught up in the idea of trying to find the perfect setup. And I think that, if Lucky have all of these options, I think it's very easy to fall into that rabbit hole of trying to sort of do the most optimal thing, and in so doing, sacrifice in other areas without really meaning to.
For me, I like having all the different setups just because it's fun. It's a fun thing for me to think about and focus on. But my approach to using them, and this is partly a learned thing because of the issues we've had with forks, but my approach to using them is we have our prime setup and there needs to be a good reason to change. So I think I'm hopefully more in the middle of those things than anything. But I completely agree, our changes of setup have never ended well. They have at best ended neutrally. But then again, there are robots you look at that do it incredibly well. And I said that like I had an example. Actually, you know what? Best example in the world, Dwayne Nibley. Only 2 setups, but completely necessary to the way that robot works. They got the big solid titanium wedge for when they're up against a horizontal, and the 4 long thin forks for anything else. That's the kind of configurability that I think you need in order to go far. Anything above that is maybe a little more, let's have fun with this, or let's go mad on this and frankly harm ourselves.
Awesome.
Talking of robots that harm themselves through their configurability.
Yeah, should we consider Shockwave?
We shall, probably quite briefly, consider Shockwave. I don't think it's any secret that I was a big fan of Shockwave. Big, tanky looking thing. Simple way of working. Just love it. Absolutely love it.
Complete with a token active weapon.
I don't think it was that token on Shockwave.
Okay.
In Robot Wars, this is the kind of active weapon that actively wins you fights. Now, I'm not saying that it did, but it's the sort that does.
I'm struggling to read your notes for this one.
How so?
I don't know, I can't parse the verses sentence.
Okay, so because the first one is a melee,
okay.
I've then used semicolons as separators from there.
Yeah, okay, I see.
Maybe dashes would have made more sense because I'm admittedly looking at it and going a bit, huh?
Gotcha. Parsed correctly. So all I needed to know was the tokenizer, that's all I needed.
Is that the word for it?
That's how I describe it as a programmer. I'd be like, you're going to tokenize on a semicolon, and then that splits it into those 3 things. And it makes sense after that.
Hopefully in any place where there's a comma within a fight, I've then tokenized with semicolons. That's the plan. And I believe the grammatically correct thing to do. Are you looking for soft wins by any chance? Because I feel like you'll find what you for sure will consider a soft win.
You've lost me.
No, I'm just wondering if you noticed anything in that record that you wanted to criticise.
No, I was just I was literally just got distracted trying to parse the sentence. That was it.
Fair. I was expecting you to just see Foxick and go off on one.
I mean, it counts as a win, so we'll give them that. A win by default is still a win.
I mean, we've taken them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have particularly strong feelings about Shockwave, really. It doesn't really do it for me, personally.
If there were a horizontal spinner in this fight, I would be looking at Shockwave as a contender. But because it's up against a flipper and a vert, it's kind of hard to give it that much of a hope, especially as an older robot as well.
Well, it's funny, because I feel like the fact that there's sort of scoopy, wedgy flipper thingy on the front, because I would have thought that would be weaker against horizontals because it's not as firmly attached to the robot as a static wedge is, because it's on those articulating arms and they're not the world's thickest arms. You sort of think that seems to me like it'd be more easy to tear off. Whereas, I mean, maybe a vert would still tear it off, but I feel like there's a bit more give and it would sort of like the vert would sort of send the scoop flying, but not necessarily tear it off and not necessarily hit the body of the robot as well. I don't know. Maybe I'm being optimistic there.
I guess since it doesn't have the big sloped sides on the wedge, it wouldn't enjoy hits to that part, but it's still got quite a lot of area to try and deflect hits with. And when it's deflecting those hits, that's mostly reacting down into the ground rather than going back through the robot. Is at least the principle. Whether it's the reality, I don't know.
Yeah, it all depends on the bite that the horizontal would get.
The reason I'd be worried about it against a vert is more ground clearance than anything. Although thinking about it, Witch Doctor doesn't use any kind of feeder wedge. So maybe they would be able to get in fairly effectively. You've dissuaded me without trying... Well, you've dissuaded me, but not for the reasons you thought you were.
Perfect.
On that basis, it's tricky to immediately discount one. Which setup, by the way, of their thousands do you think Lucky would run in this?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know, man.
Would they go with the full width front wedge? Because again, Witch Doctor's not going to get under any of their wedges.
Is their full width front wedge, is that articulated in any way? I can't remember.
I think it is to a small degree.
And are the wedgelet things they have in this picture more or less... I would have thought they'd go with the most articulated thing, basically.
So probably the double wedge setup then. Or the double wedge lit setup, should I say.
I'd have thought so. I think that makes the most sense to me. But I feel like it's minor gains. I think a single wedge would be a bad idea because it means you've got to make sure you're coming at... Because it puts the burden on Lucky to make sure they're coming at their opponent from the right side, or from the correct side, if they only have one of the wedgelets on. Whereas if they have both of them on, then they've got a wider attack front, if that makes sense.
When I say one wedge, I don't mean just taking one of those off. I mean going with their full width wedge.
I know what you mean. Yeah, and then the full wedge is heavier, I presume, and I guess that means they have to use different armor elsewhere. And I don't know if that would be a bit dangerous with Witch Doctor.
I wouldn't necessarily assume it's heavier when you consider that those wedgelets kind of fold around back on the inside. That's quite a lot of material. They could be marginally thicker as well. So it could well be that there wouldn't be any other compromise. I'm sure the setups we've seen them run between the two, wedge aside, always look pretty similar.
So this is the thing, right? So if the difference in weight between the full width wedge and the two wedgelets is minimal, I don't understand why they have both options.
Presumably the double wedge gives them a slightly lower ground clearance, or a more sort of reliable ground clearance with the two. That's not something I've explained very well, but I hope you know what I mean in terms of them being like forks rather than one wide thing.
Yeah, because if the right-hand side is propped up on something, the left-hand side can still hit the floor and get under stuff.
Yeah, and I think it also does give the weapon a bit more access to the opponent. When they've got the two on, the weapon kind of has that lip bit that comes down in a kind of spatula style. Whereas when they're running the full wedge, it's usually just the end of the arm, kind of punching with nothing to actually get under. So they're reliant on getting further under the opponent before they can flip.
I think I'd go with the two wedgelet things. I think I'd sort of give as much opportunity to get the weapon in play as possible, I think.
I think that would make sense also in terms of minimising their ground clearance against Shockwave as well. So we'll assume that together. We're also happy to say, by the way, that the two versions of Lucky are essentially the same. We're not going to try and pick between 2016 and 2018. They're just kind of the same robot.
Yeah, I'm sure. Great offence to the team. Yes, they are the same robot.
This is something that's probably already came up, but a year ago, where kind of if there's no major change in design, I think we can safely treat them roughly the same. We know there will have been improvements internally, optimizations, but not enough for us to kind of go, expunge the earlier record, this is a new robot. Whereas the changes to Witch Doctor, I think, are significant enough that you say, yeah, forget 2016, or, yeah, 2016, we'll look at 2018 on its own.
Yeah.
So who are we discounting then?
Lucky.
That was said with a lot of confidence. Is that quite cut and dried for you?
It's not. It is close. I'm torn between all of them in some way, right? Because yeah, this is pre-2019 Witch Doctor, which is a bit flaky. I feel like I remember them burning stuff out and things like that. Like it's a much flakier robot. Lucky the win-loss ratio for Lucky though. That's the thing that gets me. And again, I've just got that sense that it's always a bit disappointing, that it always just sort of never quite lives up to my expectation of it. And then Shockwave, as much as I'm not overly enamoured with it, its record is hard to argue with, and I think it would be reasonably effective against both of these robots. And so I'm sort of like left looking between Witch Doctor and Lucky, and I don't know, it's the record that swings it for me just in the end. And I guess I like Witch Doctor, and it's hard to ignore that.
The issue I have with giving Shockwave kind of a free pass is that A, its record is positive, but against some quite dodgy robots. The win against Foxy, it didn't have to work all that hard for. The win against MR Speed Squared, that was a perfect opponent for it in quite an underpowered and unbalanced ring spinner. The Thor fight, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I remember there being an element of luck to the win, which was then avenged later on in, I think, a far more dominant performance from Thor. Hang on, no, Oh, sorry, so what happened here? It had two fights against Thor in its heat. Lost one and won one. So it lost the first one in the sort of round-robin thing and then won the actual heat final in what I still recall being quite a lucky win. So that's reason number one that I don't feel too confident about it. Reason number two is that we're in the battle box, where it doesn't have the pit to work with or house robots.
That is true.
In a sense, I think that's just as much a disadvantage for Lucky, but at least the wins we've seen Lucky get have been in that environment. It's proven an ability to win fights in a semi-featureless box. But I would be happy to discount Lucky if you feel strongly about it.
I don't know that I feel strongly about it.
The problem is, if neither of us feel strongly about it, we're stuck.
We're at something of an impasse.
Are you about to suggest rolling a die to decide which one we eliminate?
No.
Good.
The thing is that I think that Witch Doctor is going to deliver a bunch of damage and then burn out and not necessarily fully die, but just become a bit of a useless brick, right? And which robot is it most likely to be able to deliver debilitating damage to in that time? And I feel like it's more likely to take out Lucky because it's got exposed wheels, and Lucky gets unlucky with jamming itself up sometimes as well. Whereas I feel like Shockwave, I don't know, it's not necessarily going to like win definitively, but I feel like it would just sort of tank its way through, and the other two would take themselves out.
But then Shockwave is the robot that got one-shotted by Carbide in basically the only time it was hit anywhere other than its wedge.
Yeah, but Witch Doctor isn't Carbide.
Let's discount Lucky. And then I think we do need to give the advantage to Witch Doctor here, I think. It's just a question of by how much.
Yeah, I don't think it's a huge amount because, like I said, I feel like Witch Doctor could deliver a lot of damage early in the fight, and assuming that Shockwave survives it, I think that it's quite likely that this version of Witch Doctor would burn itself out.
It's worth remembering as well that Lucky and Shockwave are probably going to gang up on it early. So it's going to face a lot of early pressure. So that does make it quite close, I think. I don't want to start on a 4 and 3, but maybe we're going that way, or can we say 5 and 2? Because it is still facing a robot from 2 years prior.
Let's go with a 5 and 2. Let's go with a 5 and 2.
Oh boy, first die roll of 2020.
Oh dear. Right, so what would it be? 1 through 5 for Witch Doctor.
6 and 7 for Shockwave.
7 for Shockwave. Let me, I don't know if I can angle my microphone or not, if it's worth the effort.
I think we have all the Foley we need.
Right then, it's going. It's a 3.
Just as I'd started writing up the shock victory that Shockwave scored.
Congratulations to Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor? That Doctor. Way!
Excellent, I've even updated the notes.
Right then, up next we have Vanquish versus Black Ice versus Basilisk.
Can we just skip this one? No? Okay.
We're committed. We've got to do everything.
I guess now is the time to remind ourselves of the iron ore rule,
What's the iron ore rule?
where we can only treat a robot as though it works the best we've seen it work,
Poor Vanquish.
making iron ore a wedge, not a flipper. Now, in this case, I'm fairly sure we've never seen Vanquish's weapon work.
Did it not even do like a showboaty thing at the beginning?
I mean, even that wouldn't prove that it could actually lift another robot.
That's true. That's very true.
You know, we've flapped our hammer around to show off, but it doesn't mean anything.
Look, it's a highly damaging hammer.
Because, of course, Vanquish had the first fight against Icewave, where it broke in two, and then had the UK versus the rest of the world fight against Captain Shredderator, where everything had kind of been put back together, but the weapon wasn't actually working. And because it wasn't a proper fight, they let it in the arena anyway, and it just wedged its way to still somehow losing to Captain Shredderator. So I think we have to treat it as just a wedge, which in a lot of fights wouldn't be a major disadvantage. And in this one, possibly isn't a major disadvantage.
No. But like, you know, torn in two. I know that Icewave is a powerful spinner, but torn in two, even so.
As a robot with no major bite points on the front end, that was especially impressive.
Yeah.
So I think that's all that needs saying about Vanquish for now. But shockingly, we might actually end up coming back to it, because next we've got Black Ice. It has won a fight against Bad Kitty and Scorpio, so I would say one of the worst fights in BattleBots history. Certainly reboot history. Scorpios got stuck under the screws, and as an escape route, tried to just saw straight through them, and were, I think, politely asked not to do that. And then Bad Kitty kind of kept driving around for a while. Its weapon eventually kind of stopped, and I think it ended up just smoking for no apparent reason, and Black Ice went through despite not really doing anything. It was kind of fast, it was able to push, but its weapons were bizarre, and it was basically a wedge.
It says here it's got 2 vertical spinners, which seems generous to me.
I mean, they spin vertically, what more do you want? I think that in the photo, they look like the arms of an angry man. The tiny arms.
I'm going to call it a drum, just to annoy you.
I mean, they span independently, so...
Damn it!
I know this because one of them broke and the other kept working.
I can't call them a drum now. That's like...
I mean, you couldn't have anyway. Well, you could have, but you shouldn't have.
I could have tried. I felt like I would have had more grounds to do so if they were the same mechanism, but if they're independent, then... Either way, they seem utterly pointless to me.
Its reward for that was to fight Tombstone, which, to be fair, did highlight how well armoured it is, but not much else.
No.
It's also not invertible, and has no way of self-righting.
Oh dear.
But hey, the driver was a former astronaut, so it's got that going for it.
That means it must be good. It must be out of this world.
I love that you sighed about your own joke.
I know. I'm disappointed in myself.
So now we should get on to what I think we can genuinely call the best robot in this fight.
Oh, dear.
And that's Basilisk.
This is such a weird-looking robot. Like, I don't think I've ever seen such a vertical-looking flipper.
Everything about it is oddly proportioned. It has proven itself to be a semi-competent flipper. It can flip things. It beat Chomp in the year where Chomp couldn't chomp. It then won a tag team fight with Double Dutch as its partner against Parallax and Balespear.
Can we count that as a win?
I mean, we kind of have to, but we can dismiss it as quickly as we like.
I mean, the tag team stuff is just chaotic at best, and it's like the team wins, not necessarily the robot.
Should we call it half a win?
Yes, this has 1.5 wins.
There we go. 1.5 wins, just like half points in bingo.
Oh, no.
It then... Oh, and that, by the way, required a judge's decision.
1.25 wins. Don't do that. No.
I've done it.
No. Damn it. Sorry, Basilisk.
The defeats it then had were a Science Channel Rumble against Deviled Egg and Axe Backwards. I think Deviled Egg won that. Can't remember. Another judge's decision. And then in its first season, 2016... it just lost its opening round against Gemini and Blacksmith. I think Blacksmith won that.
Now, for judges' decisions in the losing side, does it mean it's like 2.5 losses, or is it 1.5 losses?
I think it was knocked out as part of the fight.
Ah, that's a definitive loss.
But I could be wrong. I could just be saying that because it means I don't have to answer your question.
That makes my inane route of inquiry utterly moot, which is probably a good thing.
I have heard people claim that Basilisk had some kind of autonomous weapon system based on the fact there is a little camera kind of on the front in a weird place in the snake's mouth. I've not found anything that corroborates that, but I also haven't looked very hard. It might have just been there so they could get some cool footage of them not very effectively flipping things.
I feel like if you're doing an autonomous system, where is the camera mounted? Is it actually mounted in the flipper? Would it be actually pointing up if the flipper was fired? Or is it like behind it?
It would be pointing up, I think, if the flipper was fired, but considering it's designed... Well, if it is as part of an autonomous system, that would be for firing the flipper. So once the flipper is already fired, it would not be interested in what was happening in front of it. Or it could be interested but unable to act.
It would just be annoying to filter that. I'm thinking about the implementation. It doesn't matter. We've got no significant evidence to prove that it's autonomous. So
now, I want to know everything that would be involved in making that autonomous now. From you, the expert.
Or I'm just sort of thinking, like, because you'll do... I mean, do we know that it's a camera?
It looks a hell of a lot like a little GoPro. Or GoPro knockoff. Who knows?
So again, that just seems like the wrong way to go. Because you can't get depth information from a single GoPro without doing some kind of like big guesswork based on image processing and computer vision. I don't know, like if I would not use a camera as the primary sensor for autonomous or anything autonomous like that. You'd want you want something that's got depth stuff built in, like, you know, like LiDAR and stuff like that.
As I say, it is rumoured to have potentially been part of a potential autonomous firing system. None of those rumours say anything about it being a good system.
I want to back up why I think that would be a dodgy way of doing it. Because, right, so like from a single lens camera, you haven't got any parallax information to try and derive depth. So you've got to do it based on contextual clues from a single image, right? So you've got to identify objects and use other heuristics to try and judge depth for what's moving and what's not and where things are in 3D space, which is doable. Like you can do 3D solves from a single camera, but it's time consuming and hard, and you have to do lots of computer vision and stuff. And then doing that in real time quickly enough to be autonomous seems challenging. And then if the camera's actually on the flipper that moves, you've then got to filter all of that information out when the flipper fires, because you're not interested in judging the depth to the ceiling. It just seems like a lot of effort to me.
I'm glad you said that, because that's roughly what I was thinking would be the problem with it, and I now feel clever. That's come from watching a few Code Bullet videos where he uses image recognition, even of something like a sort of 2D pixel art game, and that is already difficult to do in real time on a whole computer. So trying to do anything like that, something that's probably going to be more complex on hardware you can fit inside a robot without it taking up more weight than it's worth, seems unlikely.
Yeah, like computer vision is a really hard thing to do.
It's almost like they're not built for it. Anyway, enough of questions I regret asking. Who are we discounting?
Oh, I don't know, man. Can I discount all of them?
Yes, but I think we'll discount Black Ice first, surely, as the non-invertible robot with acres of ground clearance in the arena with a flipper, and even a wedge that frankly looks like it could probably tip it over.
Sold. To the man with a good idea.
So the question is, what advantage do we give Basilisk? Vanquish isn't completely out of this. It's invertible, it's got some drive, it's got some push. So I believe... Actually, I suppose this is technically a setup thing we should discuss. For the Captain Shredderator fight, because the weapon wasn't working, they ran without the bars on top that then made it invertible. With the weapon working, which we're not sure we can assume it does, it should in principle be able to self-right.
I'm not sure I could comfortably call it invertible, because you would think that unless they'd just come out of the fight where they were torn in two, right? Like, assuming that hasn't happened, and they've got this robot that is, you know, fully assembled, it's got the bars on top, which I look from this picture look like it would prevent it from running upside down, and they would have to self-right from the weapon that we can't say works.
So I've currently got the Captain Shredderator fight up, and they have gone in without the bars on top. So we have evidence of them running without the bars.
Yeah, but like, is that we've had a situation like this before, haven't we? Where like this is not. I wouldn't have thought that this is like a premeditated configuration option for them. This is a we've got limited time to make whatever repairs we can configuration option.
Did we had this with traction and the vulture wedge, didn't we?
Yeah, and I can't remember what we decided.
It's tricky because the only reason it's running like this is battle damage. And the only reason it's being allowed is that it's not a competitive fight. And Retuncti is a very serious competition with rules that are taken very seriously. So I guess if they were in a situation where they couldn't go into the arena with an active weapon, we wouldn't let them go in. So we have to assume they're going in with their weapon, which then may or may not work. Which means, for Retuncti purposes, they would not be invertible and would be reliant on self-righting. I'm with you on this. I say I'm with you on this. I don't know if that's what you're actually advocating for, but it's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they've got to go. They can't be invertible. They've got to go in with an active weapon, and they can't run upside down.
Yeah, which I think puts it heavily in Basilisk's favour.
Yeah, how heavily? 5-2.
I wouldn't be averse to calling it a 6-1.
6-1.
I'd rather it was a 5-2, just so we haven't done loads of 6-1s, but that's not a particularly solid reason.
I mean, the thing is that 6-1 feels a bit mean to Vanquish, but then it hasn't done very well. It hasn't, like...
This is definitely more difficult now that we've met loads of the Roboteers. Just like,
yeah.
I really like Tweedy. He's a really nice guy. He's built some fantastic robots, especially in the smaller weight classes, but Vanquish didn't ever get to work on TV. And we've got to base this on what we saw on TV.
We have to be ruthless. Ruthless.
I'm happy at 6-1.
But like,
or 1-6, technically.
Is Basilisk good enough for that?
Basilisk can flip a robot over. It can turn a robot over.
Oh, and it's going to win aggression and stuff, isn't it? Screw it. 6-1. 1-6. Right, what number? So 1 for Vanquish, everything else for Basilisk. Okay. It's rolling. It's a 7.
A comprehensive victory for Basilisk.
Congratulations.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Coming in hot at fight number 3. We've got Tombstone versus Crackers and Smash versus Warhead. Why are you laughing at my perfect intro?
It's just so perfect. I couldn't help but react somehow.
Should we start with Tombstone?
That would make sense.
Now, this is one of those robots I was talking about earlier where I think we can say that Tombstone is Tombstone. It has been improved slowly over time, but it's not had any major revision change or any version change significant enough for us to say, we'll just take 2016 or we'll just take 2018. We'll treat it as a holistic thing.
Okay.
Sound good to you?
I have a vague recollection that is the case as well. 'Cause didn't they go into a few fights with like a frame from the previous season or something?
Yeah, 2018 was still 2016 Tombstone in terms of frame. I don't know if stuff internally had been changed. I feel like it probably had. It was then reframed for 2019 and the size changed a bit, but we're not doing 2019, so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, right then. Let's go with Tombstone is Tombstone. We need that Incredibles meme now. Tombstone is Tombstone.
I mean, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll put it in the show notes anyway. I don't feel like we need to walk through the record here. 15 wins, 2 defeats. One of those was in a grand final. The other was against a robot that we don't talk about.
One of those is against Bombshell, which...
It wins lots of fights. It breaks stuff. Is good robot. 10 out of 10 robot. Would robot again.
Ah, dear. Would Bombshell again.
Shut up.
I'm enjoying the decidedly low resolution picture of Crackers and Smash you've got for this one.
Look. Battleforce Wiki being a fandom site doesn't allow you to copy directly the high-res versions of images, but it will still let you copy the preview version that's just on the page, and they're kind of tiny. So I used those, knowing that it would be enough for you to recognise the robot.
But this isn't from the BattleBots wiki, though, is it?
No, the Robot Wars... Okay, so I used the Robot Wars wiki for Robot Wars robots and the BattleBots official site for BattleBots ones. Now, the advantage of the Robot Wars ones is that they do come through as PNGs with transparent backgrounds, which means that I can make them slightly larger without having to mess around with the order of items on the page to get them behind the text.
I see.
When you do, 60 of these slides... 78 slides currently, you learn where the efficiencies are, you know?
I feel like I've touched a nerve by criticising the resolution of this image.
You criticise anything about this document and I will physically come for you. I don't care how far away you are. I don't care if that journey's essential. I am coming for you.
You can come for me, but only until you're 2 metres away.
I'll bring a 2.1 metre stick. I've also just realised that I forgot to show which fights on here are from different series. So there you go.
I mean, I'm sure it's fine. It doesn't really influence my thinking very much.
If you already got strongly formed opinions on Crackers and Smash.
What, the cowardly duo? No, not at all.
I don't recall either of us ever saying such a thing.
Oh, dear.
See, I want to say that now I've had the experience of competing, I understand why you would want to forfeit a match in that situation. But I don't, because that's not us. We would just want to go in for more. We'd have a second fight if it meant we could get broken more. But we are not them. We did probably not put as much time and money into our robot as they did, so I will try not to judge.
This time.
But damn, it would have been a good fight if it had continued. Because they are one of the robots that properly looks like giving Carbide a real fight. Especially that sort of version of Carbide. The Series 8 Carbide was a little bit flaky on the weapon. Series 9 and 10 Carbide was not. And it looked like it could be unstoppable. And they were the ones I thought might stop them. At that point, at least.
Yeah. But here we are. Oh, do we have to make a version decision here because of the difference in the flipper setup?
Good question. So, the one difference between them, between Series 9 and Series 10, is that the green one, I thought I knew whether it was Cracker or Smash, but Cracker and Smash would make sense as names, would both make sense as names for the spinner, so I'm no longer sure. In Series 9, it was a front hinge lifter, and in Series 10, it was kind of a rear hingey, forky setup. Which, I mean, is that a significant enough change to worry about? I don't know. I know there were further internal changes as well. I know they stripped a fair bit of weight out of the frame and redistributed that to other things, which will, I'm sure, have made a big difference, but they did also perform worse.
I think we've got to pick a version. I think this is a big. This is like a fairly was going to say fairly obvious. This is an external change, so I feel like we've got to pick a version.
Okay, I'll bear that in mind next time a robot comes in with a different paint job.
No,
That's an external change as well. No, I'm happy to say this is enough. If you feel it's enough, then I'm neutral enough to agree with
look,
you.
it's a different weapon. And you just said that
lifter
the
is a
frame
lifter.
Oh, is it? Is it now?
Just like a spinner is a spinner. Horizontal, vertical, doesn't matter.
Oh dear. So the various versions of, what is it, tungsten that exist, they're all just the same robot.
I mean, there's only one version of tungsten. You're thinking of cobalt.
Oh, God. Whatever, man. Whatever.
If you're going to throw shade my way, throw accurate shade. Come on.
You and I both know that I'm always going to be throwing inaccurate shade.
I'm mostly impressed that you realised that tungsten was even peripherally related to what you were talking about.
The information is there. It's just hard to access.
I'm going to say, if we have to choose, I think we should go with the Series 9 version.
Okay. That's fine by me.
The Series 10 version admittedly had a hard time in its first fight, but the Big Nipper fight was pretty conclusive.
I shall take your word for it.
That was when Big Nipper threw the spinner into the ceiling, and Sir Killalot sat on the lifter.
Oh, yes. I remember that. Yeah, let's go with the Series 9 version.
Excellent. With that decision made, Warhead.
Warhead.
So this had the grabber and spinner versions in both outings. So I'd be happy to call them one and the same.
Yeah, but I guess we've got to decide what front end it's using, but yeah.
That's a fight-by-fight decision, so yeah, we'll make that for this fight, and if it goes through, we'll have to make it again.
Yeah.
The problem is, I say, as I was saying that, I was actually building to the point that for some reason I feel like the 2018 version was just better, but I don't know why I feel that.
Well, you'd expect that it would be, because that's 2 years of internal improvements, assuming they did any work on it at all, so...
You say that, but it was also appearing in the original run of BattleBots. So the 2016 version had a decade of improvements. It hadn't really, but you know what I mean.
Well, what I'm saying is that, yes, it would make sense that the 2018 version would be slightly better because it's got more time to improve things.
Oh, yeah, but so is everyone around it. So actually, I suppose in terms of...
All I'm trying to do here, Ryan, is agree with you. That's it, okay? You don't have to make it so difficult.
I've got to earn your agreement. Now, I was about to make a point about how everything around it was also getting better, and therefore the fact it still had a better record counts for more. So I was arguing an argument that wasn't actually happening.
Yeah. That's never happened before.
And it will never happen again. But yeah, for some reason, there's something... I think it's just the visual of Warhead improved maybe for 2018. But also that might be just because we saw the grabber more. Whereas... the spinner, with the kind of chrome aesthetic, just looks really dated to me. Largely because it's a very old bit of kit.
It definitely looks a lot better with the big head.
Which is funny, because the big head is really weirdly proportioned. I wouldn't say it looks good with the head, it just looks better than with the disc.
I think it looks awesome with the head, man.
I think it is awesome with the head. I wouldn't say it looks awesome with it. It works incredibly well.
Looks incredible, man.
And the whole sort of fire thing helps a lot.
It's got everything I love, you know. Lots of silver metal, good design aesthetic, lots of fire.
I think the key thing is, whichever version they're running, it's damn entertaining.
Yeah.
The disc has given us the great fight against complete control, if absolutely nothing else. And the Warrior Dragon fight where the disc broke, but that was fun almost despite the disc rather than because of it. And then the grabber has given us fights like the Sharkoprium fight that went the distance, the Chomp fight that went the distance, the Blacksmith fight that went the distance. That's something I've especially appreciated more in the Discovery era. Going into a fight after however much build-up, knowing that it's probably not going to be over in 20 seconds. And then the fact that I think we all just love the team as well. It all comes together for big love for Warhead. Which is why it's almost a shame that it has to come into this fight. Who do you think we have to discount here?
I don't know.
It's hard to know how Warhead would stand up to this.
It pains me to say it. I think that Warhead is the one that's not going to win. I mean, lay my cards on the table. Tombstone's going to win this fight, I think. But I think that Warhead is going to take more damage than Crackers and Smash. But then But then, of course, Crackers and Smash are half weight, and so they get a lot, they get sent flying a lot harder than Warhead does when Tombstone hits them.
But that, in a sense, might minimise the actual damage they take. From the hits, at least. Warhead, whatever setup it runs, I feel like we haven't decided because we both kind of know it's futile. Whatever setup it runs, I don't think it's the kind of robot that's going to take the hits well.
I think this is interesting, right? So a part of me is like, if Warhead were my robot and I was deciding, I'd go in with the big head, the grabber, just because because I think it's what it looks best at. That to me is like the canonical form of this robot. I don't know how true that is, but for me, it's like the canonical version of this robot has the giant head. And so I'd be like, well, it's a moot point, so let's put the one that looks coolest on there and just have a go and see what happens. And you never know with the grappler, they might manage to grab something critical on Tombstone or Crackers and Smash or something. Who knows? But then obviously I don't know. I would not be surprised, and I would expect that the big head is the more expensive of the two attachments and also the flimsier of them. So
the whole sort of prime setup thing is interesting because for anyone that watched them during the original run, they only had the disc. So for those people, the disc would be the setup. But I think, just going through my notes here, I think they've used the head as much as they've used the disc in the modern series. Part of that being because for their final two fights, the disc just wasn't available, it was broken. So it's a question, I suppose, of what is tactically correct here. I think they probably used the disc just because you'd rather go weapon to weapon with Tombstone than anything else. As in spinning weapon to spinning weapon. And you'd always feel that you have that chance of, even if you get hit first, there's a chance that you ricochet off into one of their wheels or you ride up and catch the frame of the spinner or something like that. But there's also an argument for going for control, trying to get around the back, and if you do, you've got that opportunity to run their weapon straight into a wall.
They're not getting around the back of Tombstone, though, are they?
Probably not, but this is a multi-robot fight, so maybe you've got more chance than normal. The one thing we've never seen Tombstone have to do is fight multiple opponents. And that's always the thing that I've kind of wanted to see, especially for the big-name robots. If you want to test them, don't give them higher quality opposition. Give them more opposition at once.
Just throw the kitchen sink at them.
No, throw 2 or 3 kitchen sinks at them. Plus all the fixtures and fittings.
Yeah, and also some bathroom sinks, because why not?
Why is everyone so prejudiced against the bathroom sinks? The kitchen may be the more glamorous place, although I suppose the bathroom sinks would smash more easily.
In general, yeah.
Anyway, robots. I've just convinced myself with that little speech that this isn't as clear-cut as I thought it was.
What, the who to eliminate or the what setup to Warhead use?
The whole fight.
The whole fight.
The setup I never thought was clear-cut. I thought it was kind of a 50-50, but didn't matter. But now I've persuaded myself it does matter.
Yeah, right. I'm not convinced it does matter, so I'm just going to arbitrarily decide that they're going to go with the disc.
We'll run with that. Crackers and Smash only have the one setup, so that's fine. We're not allowing them to come in without their spinner. I suppose we could question what bar Tombstone's going to use, but I think that's a thing that only really matters to the way Ray drives it. In terms of his spin-up times and things like that. Maybe he goes for the one that spins up fastest.
Am I right in thinking that some of them can get lower than others? That the longer one, because it's like slightly tilted down, the longer one gets lower? Or are there some where they're even lower on the shaft? I feel like he's got a setup that gets that weapon low down, which I think would be useful against Crackers and Smash.
So the long one seems to always be low. But I'm fairly sure he used the short black bar or something against Minotaur and also got that very low, but that might have just been where the frame was bending.
Yeah, I can't remember how it all goes together now, but yeah, whatever bar gets him lowest down, I think is the one that he should use.
But if that is the long one, that's also the one that spins up slowest.
I mean, all the very minor details of a decision, I think this is high up there.
I'm happy to say he chooses a good bar.
An appropriate bar based on the experience that he has and that we don't.
He makes the right choice of bar. But I agree he'd probably be making that choice thinking more about what is best against Crackers and Smash than what is better against Warhead. I kind of want to discount Crackers and Smash here.
Really?
Because the advantage they have as a multi-bot is lost when there are already multiple robots in the arena. I don't see the weaponry doing a significant amount to either opponent, or a significant enough amount, certainly compared to the damage that they, and let's face it, Warhead are likely to take. I think they'd have a big influence in the fight, because let's face it, everyone's ganging up on Tombstone. I think they're likely to set up some kind of attack for Warhead that could prove definitive, but that doesn't make them a likely winner of the fight itself. So I would be happy to discount them. What's your thinking?
Yeah, I think they just get flung around the arena by Tombstone and then fairly rapidly broken, to be honest.
Fair. So Crackers and Smash are out of contention, but not out of the equation. They're still a term.
Yeah.
Warhead, Tombstone.
I mean, Tombstone's going to win it, right?
The ganging up thing is preying on my mind.
What's Warhead going to do?
Tombstone has committed the cardinal sin of taking wheels into the arena.
That is true. Exposed wheels, you automatically lose fights because of that.
Yeah, no robot with exposed wheels has ever won anything. But in this situation, we know that Ray is really good at protecting those wheels and using them as bait. But because this is a melee, I just feel the chances are way higher of him taking some significant damage than usual. Not to the point where I would make him the non-favourite, but it does close the gap, I think.
This is not a 6-1 then.
I'm not sure it's even a 5-2.
Ooh.
I think this could be as close as a 4-3, just based on that.
Ooh.
But I'm the guy that thought that Quantum was going to give him a really good fight, so
4-3.
how does that make you feel instinctively?
I don't see it. I don't see it. I agree that it's more likely for Tombstone to lose wheels or take damage to the wheels. But I don't think it's that much more likely.
If we had the Bogglerbot's judges, I'd still give it a 6-1 even without a wheel. But alas, we do not. I'll negotiate down to 5-2.
I'm comfortable with a 5-2. I think that this is, once again, no matter how many sort of like how many gradations we have here, I feel like there's always something that makes me want to go a bit in between them. So I'm happy with 5 and 2. But I want something in between them.
So that makes it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Tombstone, 6 and 7 for Warhead. And if this comes out as a 5, that means your decision mattered. Just want to set that knowledge up ahead of time.
2.
Okay, so it didn't matter at all.
Utterly irrelevant. Tombstone wins.
I would have been very happy for the upset there.
Yeah.
Not going to lie. It's good to have a robot like Tombstone going through. We know that fights are likely to get closer as we go, and it's good to still have it there to discuss. But that would have been a worthy upset.
Right then, been really looking forward to this one. This is going to be fantastic. We're going to talk about Creepy Crawlies, Magnetar, and Double Dutch.
We have to make this a thing going forward. Just increasing levels of enthusiasm for every single fight.
I don't know if I quite crossed into committed enough that it worked. I don't know, but
That sounded like kids' TV presenter that doesn't really want to be there, and that for me was the ideal tone.
well, I'm glad I got that. I'm glad I got that across.
Creepy Crawlies, what a machine.
What a machines indeed. A whopping 0 wins and 1 loss. That's not a good record.
Creepy Crawlies was basically fed to Son of Waiachi in a so-called qualifier match that was entirely gratuitous. And that's literally all there is to say about it. Really neat idea, but
What do those weapons do? Can they actually grab stuff?
they are grabbers and potentially lifters as well, I believe. One of them became part of the original Swarm, along with all the other Swarm robots, and was, I think, entirely ineffective.
Shocker.
Magnetar! Have fun!
Oh, Magnetar.
It was a lot more reliable than Pulsar.
This is true.
The wins it had were all good wins. Wins that it earned. In the melee it had, I think Push to Exit put Hobgoblin out quite early, and then Magnetar did some pretty big damage to the front end of Push to Exit. The actual knockout was, I think, quite a simple failure on Push to Exit's part, but it still gave it enough of a punch in the face that it caused that. The Expulsion fight, Expulsion was struggling, but again, it got a couple of good punts in, really showed off the power that it had. And then the Thor fight, poor Thor. Again, fairly relentless with the weapon. The unreliability came in the form of self-righting, where it seemed to self-right once and then get stuck open a lot of the time.
Which is, to be fair, self-righting is harder than we thought it was.
Self-righting with your weapon is hard. I feel like a dedicated Shreemec should be reliable.
The problem is that every gram they put into the self-righting is a gram they're taking out of the weapon or the drive or the armour, right? So I feel like that in the same way that our hammer could only just self-right us, I feel like the self-righter for Magnetar can only just self-right it. And I think once you put it in battle, it's likely to, you're right on the edge, and it's kind of like it's like more like a last resort. I feel like it's not expected for this robot to be on its back, and it's just kind of if we need it, it's there, and it should hopefully work.
I do wonder, however, if Magnetar would have been invertible without the self-righting mechanism.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure if the geometry is quite there for it, but maybe with some standoffs, yeah.
Considering the space that would have been saved, because the setup for it is on it's a sort of long, skinny setup of quite a long gearbox and a motor, which I assume was done simply because everything is packed into Magnetar so damn tight that was what worked. But again, the fact that not only what you were saying about, trying to be efficient with weight, trying to be efficient with space as well, I did, I think, leave it as quite a compromised system. It was like 80% there, and the 20% cost them a lot.
It's a beautiful machine, though.
Oh, as always, Ellis has never made something ugly. He's one of those builders who has really... I was going to say he's one of those builders that's really nailed the combo of aesthetic and effectiveness. Maybe he's more nailed the aesthetic, but he's still pretty close on the effectiveness. His robots have a very high ceiling of their ability. When they're working, they're really working. It's just we tend to remember them for the times they're not.
Yeah, and the thing about the aesthetic for Magnetar and Pulsar and stuff is they're not like crazy outlandish kind of designs and aesthetics and stuff. They're just phenomenally well executed and like well thought out engine. It's just like here's some really beautiful engineering on display. It's like gonna have to bolt this front end on, and so it's like we're gonna draw attention to the bolts rather than try to hide them and stuff. I just think it's very, very nice.
Yeah, nothing has been added for aesthetics. Things have just been given prominence in a very smart way, which is literally what you said, but said worse.
But said again.
Talking of robots with fantastic aesthetics, Double Dutch. I remember being really excited by the concept of Double Dutch.
I feel like I'm excited every time I see this until I see the wheels, and then I go, what on earth is this meant to do?
Oh yeah, the slightly non-parallel wheel design.
I don't understand it, because surely the body of the robot is not the thing that's spinning. So why are the wheels not parallel?
So it could be for aesthetic, or it could be for internal layout. It could be for both. I feel like it probably doesn't hurt the drive power that much. It's going to be a little bit of inefficiency.
I feel like having your wheels angled like that means that you're relying on friction or lack of friction to try and get drive into something that's remotely a straight line. And as the materials and the temperature of things change in different ways, I feel like the point at which those wheels slip, because they have to slip for it to drive, the point that starts happening is going to change. And I just feel it would make the robot slightly unpredictable.
One of the things that I've learned is that robots don't drive in a straight line very well anyway. Maybe other people's do, but driving in a straight line is not something I would rely on as a driver.
No, but like having wheels at funny angles is not going to help.
It's not going to help. It's a question of whether it's going to hinder that much. And I feel like they've done this to allow them to have the body shape that probably got them accepted in the first place. This is like the weird extra meta game of BattleBots. You're not just trying to design the most effective thing, you're trying to design the thing they will let you bring. And effectiveness sometimes is secondary to aesthetic, purely so that you get a chance to be ineffective at all.
Yeah, but like surely you could have had the same body shape and then have the wheels be parallel? Well, there's no requirement from this bow tie shape thing that the wheels follow that contour.
I can imagine that being tricky if the motor and gearbox combos are quite long, because you'd then end up with, if you imagine taking one of those wheels and rotating it the few degrees it needs, that could actually move the far end, as it were, of the motor from the wheel's perspective quite a way outside of the front of the robot.
Maybe. I don't know.
I'm not saying it's a good reason, but it's possibly the reason.
Possibly.
I still think it looks pretty cool.
It looks cool until I see the wheels and then I get sad.
I'm impressed that they made this robot invertible at all.
Yeah. That is no mean feat.
That is a very skinny body, or very large wheels.
Or a combination of the two.
Once again, we have a robot here that largely owes its record to tag team fights. So it beat Parallax and Bale Spear with Basilisk as its teammate, and then lost to Petunia and Predator with Bale Spear as its teammate. There was that whole weird little pool of robots that seemed to get most of the tag teams, and I don't believe that was a compliment on the part of production. Brutal.
This is 1.5 wins then, isn't it?
And 1.5 losses.
Well, did we come to a conclusion?
Well, actually, hang on. It lost to a team that involved Predator. That's still a whole loss. That's just losing to Petunia when you had the advantage of a teammate, that is.
Yeah.
It's also just worth noting, I don't know if this is something you'll remember, but that win over Parallax and Bale Spear was televised to a degree, except that partway through it cut into a terrible advert for a Jurassic Park movie in probably the most disgusting thing I've ever seen on TV.
Oh, I'm going to watch it.
I was going to say, I have the link there for you. It'll be in the show notes, people that don't remember this, but everything about it makes me sad.
Here it goes. Oh my God.
The fact that they still had Chris and Kenny doing commentary for it particularly annoys me.
Wow. That CG, man. That's incredible. To be fair, right, credit to the VFX artists that did this. They've put in debris, right? They've made an effort to put debris into the scene that interacts with the giant dinosaur's feet.
But they've also then used shots where the robot that was supposedly destroyed is just happily driving around in the background afterwards.
Look, I imagine they were under a lot of time pressure to get that done.
You know what I'm more impressed by? The fact the sound effects when it happens are better than the sound effects that were used in the whole 2019 season.
That is disappointing. Why this fight to do that ad?
Have you seen the rest of the fight?
Well, no, because it was replaced by an advert.
It was eventually released just as one of the basement fights. The advert was the best part.
Oh, dear.
We all know why fights get cut. And we now know why they get turned into random adverts as well.
Right then. Who do you want to get rid of?
I feel like Creepy Crawlies just has to be the one to go. I don't see what it can offer against either opponent. Even the numbers advantage doesn't mean anything when your weapon doesn't really seem capable of doing anything and you have no ability to self-right or any invertibility on any of the robots. I feel like Creepy Crawlies was an excellent little art piece almost, and a great precursor to what we now have in the Four Horsemen in particular, and the Swarm to a degree, but it is definitely a product of its time and would not stand up against either of these robots, even Double Dutch.
Wow.
Which, to be fair, did damage in some of its fights. It very happily tore a wheel off of Bale Spear and then got it stuck in between both of its spinners.
Okay, a damning put down for Creepy Crawlies.
I hate to say it because I love the concept, I love the team, but it is what it is. And when we get around to the Four Horsemen, I'll have nicer things to say.
Okay.
Are you going to say it or am I?
I mean, I feel like Magnetar's going to win this.
Yeah, 6-1?
6-1?
I don't see what Double Dutch is doing to Magnetar, apart from letting Magnetar break.
Well, see, this is the thing, right? I suppose it didn't break. It failed to self-right. So this one, Magnetar didn't burn itself out, did it? So
I think they did have some drive issues at times, But as I understand it, that was more radio issues than anything, which, considering they're in the battle box, different environment may be fine. Well, actually, you know what? Who knows how electrical problems work? Nobody. They just happen.
Radio interference is a problem that nobody can solve.
Well, actually, I don't know how that fits into our can only perform at the best we've seen rule. Although we saw it have fights where it didn't have any problems, so...
Let's do it. 6 and 1.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for Magnetar, 7 for Double Dutch. It was close, I take it.
4, but like the way that it rolled.
What, in a kind of rolly pattern?
In a kind of rolly pattern where I thought for a split second it was going to be 7. Now, to be fair, looking more closely, it's the 1 and the 4 are right next to each other, and I mistook 1 for 7, so not actually that close.
So what we've just done is go a whole episode without having to make up a way that a robot won against the odds.
No, which is both a blessing and shame.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm kind of disappointed, but also kind of relieved.
Agreed.
I'm just looking ahead to the fights we have coming up, and I mean, there's no respite for the rest of this round. There's a lot of choppy water ahead.
We'll get through it. We'll manage.
Hopefully at more than 4 fights a time. Because otherwise that's 3 more episodes of three-way melees. And once we're past these, it's plain sailing.
We'll power through them next time without so much preamble.
Good plan.
You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episodes/72. And there you can find links to all the stuff we've been talking about today. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof, where you can tweet to us your favourite outdoor activity.
How has your streaming career started, by the way? Happy with it so far?
Yeah. I enjoy streaming. It's much more fun when there are people there.
So I'm sorry, I seem to keep missing it. Otherwise, I would just come in and hop in a call.
Oh no, it's fine.
But I've not wanted to steal your thunder.
I give no warning. I just decide sometimes I'm going to go live and do it. I say, speaking of no warning, I am planning to stream some more tomorrow. I've got a mission planned out for Juna.
Nice. I'm going to see, and I haven't actually bothered doing this yet. I'm going to see if Mike and I can get Rollercoaster Tycoon multiplayer working.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man.
Which obviously I won't stream, but he may. And you would be welcome to come in and criticise us, I feel.
Sold.
But would you like to hear more about my new mic setup?
Yeah, what have you done?
So, it used to be that, for reasons I still don't quite understand, I couldn't get the mic to point properly towards my face. So the mic was kind of on its side, pointing part sideways. So I'd be doing this really awkward lean to the right with my head pointing to the left in order to actually speak properly into the microphone, which meant that there wasn't anything sort of blocking my view as I tried to look at the laptop. Now I've got it properly in front of me, but like my whole right eye just can't see anything. So I'm kind of just peering over it ever so slightly. And I think over the course of recording, that is going to destroy my back.
Yeah, so I've taken the pop filter thing off mine. Well, because I use this microphone for streaming, right? And having that huge sort of thing, it blocks too much of the view. So even how I've got it at the moment, I still can't really see the bottom left of my screen. But for Kerbal Spares program, that's fine. And I haven't bothered to put the thing back on for this recording. So we'll see how it goes.
See, my pop filter isn't the issue. That's sort of down at nose level, the top of it. And because that's a really poiseable thing, you know, the way I poise that sort of arm doesn't affect anything with the microphone, so I can do that however I want. I can keep that nice and low down. It's the actual linkage of the mic stand that's in my way now. I'm attempting to take you a sort of POV shot, but once again, my phone is full of crap.
Oh dear.
I also don't understand how you can work at all without a pop filter. Are you just less plosive than I am?
Well, I don't know. We might discover at the end of this recording, when I go through it and try and edit it, that that all my P's and B's and stuff sound awful. We shall see.
I mean, I've not noticed anything so far, so that's good. And plosives come across Skype pretty well.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, we can try some plosives here. I mean, I feel like I can hear it a little bit more in the in my monitoring. Plosives. I can hear it a little bit, but...
Oh, that did pop through a bit. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, maybe it'll be terrible. Anyway.
I'm trying to get a POV that doesn't show on my room.
Oh, it's a nightmare trying to, like... I've tried to take pictures of this room occasionally as well, and it's like I'm trying to strategically angle the camera to avoid certain things. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, but take the amount of clutter that you accept and the amount of clutter that I accept. I feel like your task is pretty small by comparison.
It's probably easier than that, yeah. I had a funny conversation with some friends online a week or two ago. So, like, when everyone sort of in the UK started working from home, I've received a message. Let me look at that first.
That was me sending you the photo.
That's a lot of stuff in the way of between you and the screen. But yeah, a few weeks ago, when everyone started working from home, there was much discussion among us about the setup. You know, what are people's desks like at home and stuff. So, like, following these conversations, I rearranged this whole room that I'm in to get my desk in the window so that I've got a bit more natural light throughout the day, which is what I have in the office at work when I, back in the day when you actually, commuted to work. So I had a window there and I didn't have that at home, which was fine because, don't spend a lot of time at the desk. But then now that I'm working from home, so I've moved my desk and all that kind of stuff. We're taking pictures of the room and the desk and stuff to sort of show people and tactically angling it. But I got a few sort of funny comments from people being like, oh man, your desk is so neat and tidy. How'd you keep it that way? And I'm looking at it going, this is full of rubbish. This is horrible. Because at work, my desk has nothing on it. Like, it has a keyboard, Wacom tablet thing, and a few plants, and that's it, and a screen and stuff. But there's nothing on. There's this huge desk, expanse of space that I have, nice standing desk, but I don't like having anything on it because it's distracting and annoying. So I've got very little on there. Whereas at home, there's just more stuff that makes its way on there. I've got a tablet and a mouse because I need the mouse for some things. I've got actual speakers because I don't like wearing headphones when I'm at home. I've got like my computers on the desk now and stuff. So there's just more.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, it couldn't go under the desk anymore because I've had I won't go into it too much. The point is, there's more stuff on this desk than I'm entirely happy with, but it's still significantly neater, I think, than a lot of other people's desks, which I find horrifying, frankly.
Desks are places that clutter lives. That's the point of a desk.
No, you got to defend them.
Why would I defend the desk when the desk could defend me? By the way, I've just struck on a bit of a solution here. I have raised the laptop.
Ooh.
Which has now allowed me to raise the microphone, so I still have exactly the same problem, but higher up, which is better for the back.
Yeah, it sounds like having, at the very least, having the screen higher is more ergonomic.
I mean, ideally, I'd have the top of the screen at eye level.
Yeah.
That's where a screen should live.
Yeah.
But
guess where my screen is?
That would be rather fraught with danger, considering the amount of stuff I'd have to stack on this chair to make that happen.
Yeah. Don't lift your laptop any higher than is strictly necessary, I think.
Some might say that maybe I should sit on the chair and have a desk, but that's the kind of thinking that organised people can get away with. Although I'm starting to wonder if the fold-out bed's little shelf on the top could support a mic stand. I don't know. That's a ponderance for another day.
Yeah. How are you coping at the moment? Maybe coping is the wrong word. How's it going? How are you faring?
I don't like working from home. Working from home is dumb. No one should do it. I accidentally watched 2 episodes of Robot Wars while trying to work earlier. I don't know how that happened, but it did.
I mean, that doesn't sound like you're working from home. That sounds like you're watching Robot Wars.
I was trying to work.
How is it that I'm trying to work? Step 1, put on Robot Wars. That feels like you've, fallen at the first hurdle to me.
It wasn't. It happened about 2 hours in. I can't work in silence, so I have to have music on. I tend to do that through YouTube because it annoys you. And occasionally, YouTube gets the hang of what you're trying to listen to and auto plays onto sensible stuff. Other times, it doesn't, and you have to go in and correct it.
You've been betrayed by the algorithm, have you?
I'm betrayed as much as I'm helped. It's a force for neutral. Occasionally you have to go in and remind it of the kind of thing you're trying to listen to. I don't think it's hard for it to keep playing me instrumental versions of Daft Punk songs, but apparently that's hard. And as you go back in, you often find yourself having to flip back to the homepage where something might come up, and then my I'm on YouTube brain kicks in, and I go, oh, the first World Championships. I could put that on in the background. Then I put it on in the background, and about 5 minutes in, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that fight. That's quite a good one. I'll just drop in and watch that, and then come back, and then an hour later, you're in the grand final.
Oh dear. Is this something you should be admitting on a recording?
I just had to make the time up later. I just worked for longer.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, the work I have to do is not my normal job. It's basically a uni assignment, which I'm very grateful for because, my job isn't one that can be done from home. I don't have any responsibilities that can kind of be inflated during this period that I can do from home. So they've had to come up with something else. What they've come up with is very good quality. And the fact I'm sat here doing it gives me some job security, which I'm immensely grateful for. It's just something that I also find incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I think it's harder if you've gone from a job that's very... Well, you don't do an office job, and then suddenly being forced into an office job at home is a big shift, whereas like... I've gone from an office job in an office to an office job at home, and it hasn't really changed very much.
Yeah, that's the thing. I imagine the content of your day is roughly similar in terms of the work you do. There are things that will be missing, but the core of what you do is the same. For me, the core of what I do has completely changed into something that, frankly, doesn't suit me at the best times. We're doing a kind of reflective journal of our learning, which is something I had to do in the first year of uni, and it did not go well. I'm better at it for that experience. I'm getting the hang of it, and I'm determined to do a really good job of it, but there's a lot of extra work I need to do just to be able to do it at all, if that makes sense. A lot of extra thinking that I have to put in because it's such an alien thing to me. Yeah,
it's tricky.
But again, I'm glad they've given us something like this, because I think the insanity of just being at home would be far greater.
Yeah, I mean, I find the weekends the hardest at the moment.
Is that because you haven't been able to go outside? Or is that just because you were already at home and you've done all the things you want to do at the weekend?
It's just, I think it's a combination of everything. Like, I really enjoy being outside. I go outside a lot normally. Like, I go for a walk most lunch times and often, be out walking for about an hour at lunch. I know that I'm allowed to go outside. Like, it's not like you must stay in your house at all times. Like, I know that I'm allowed out for exercise and stuff, and they have sort of specified that walking, it does count for that. It's frustrating walking at the moment because you've got to stay 2 meters away from everyone. And normally you think, oh, that's not a problem, because where I walk normally, there's just no one else. Like, no one else is walking, and so I just don't see anyone, and it's fine. But at the moment, because everyone's got, I'm only allowed out once, everyone goes out. And so... everywhere I've tried walking for the last 2 weeks or so has been or the last week, I guess, has been a frustrating exercise in pathfinding because I'm just walking around trying to avoid everyone. Like, normally, if I go walking like around the fields near where I live and stuff, I see 1, maybe 2 other people. But at the moment, I'm going and it's like 10, 15 other people out and about, often with dogs. I'm not convinced all these people actually own dogs. I think people are borrowing friends' dogs to give them an excuse to go outside. I also see a lot of people walking around in like athletic clothing. And I'm thinking, you're not running, you're out walking. And I feel like people are just sort of dressing up to make it look like they're doing exercise.
Look, you got to signal to the world that this is your exercise.
Well, exactly, yeah. So yeah, it's frustrating because it's like I'm trying to do the right. I want to do the right thing. I want to actually stay 2 meters away from people and try to avoid people. But it's just weird and irritating because it's sort of trying. I don't want to do it in a kind of it's weirdly awkward, just like giving someone a wide berth. Obviously, I want to try and do it subtly, which means I'm sort of looking miles ahead of where I am, thinking, well, if they carry on this path, if I just go down to this like left here now, it won't look like I'm avoiding them. I'll just happen to have avoided them. And it's irritating. So I haven't been out very much.
I really enjoy the pathfinding. It's like the best bit.
Right.
I think if I may offer some advice that you probably don't want, the best way to deal with the pathfinding is to make it obvious that you're doing it, because everyone's thinking that way, and if they're not, they're an arsehole anyway. I've had so many great moments where 2 of us are approaching on a path and we're like, oop, and sidestepping, and it's like, it's a fun little moment between us. It's the most I've connected with strangers in a long time.
Just give people exactly 2 meters. Shall I go around with like a tape measure?
I mean, tornado cage, really, but...
Yeah, big tornado cage. Just be like, stay clear.
I still don't know how far 2 meters is. It's like quite. It's like if I could lay down in the gap, it's pretty much fine.
You want. We're about the same height, aren't we? I can never remember. Are we about the same height?
I think you're actually taller. But I'm 180, which you're probably about the same.
Yeah, I'm not too far off that. So you want us lying down plus like one of us lying down plus a little bit between you and everyone else.
Basically, the length of a bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
How hard can it be?
And yet here we are.
It's so fun trying to get 5 and 6 year olds to, demonstrate any level of personal hygiene. It's like they've got really good at remembering to go and wash their hands. Brilliant at that. Fair play to them. 2 minutes later, they're sat on the floor with half their hand in their mouth anyway. You send them back, they wash their hands again, they come back, then it's down their pants. You're like, well, it's not technically a risk, but it's still disgusting. Do we send them back again? And you just very quickly, I wouldn't say give up, but you pick your battles. And then they start doing their work. The system we've got at the moment, not because of this whole situation, it's like we were trying to do anyway, was that we sit a little bit away from the group and they come to us to show us what they've done. And like half of them are just coughing in your face while you're doing it, with no awareness whatsoever of what's going on.
That's horrifying at the best of times.
You see, you just kind of accept it.
This is why I could never be a teacher or work in schools.
You just have to understand that children are disgusting.
I do understand that.
They haven't learned to be non-disgusting yet.
I understand very well that children are disgusting, and my response to that is not to go and work with them.
Well, when you go and put it that way... I mean, it says it all that I've been ill permanently since I started this job. It's just unavoidable.
And then you teachers go and make the people you live with ill by proxy as well.
No, you have to build up the immunity just like we do.
Deary me. Bring home all kinds of strange and unusual pathogens.
There are some people who say, there's like mixed messages on this. Some people are saying that you're super likely to pick this up from children. Other people are saying that children are comparatively unlikely to pass it on because their immune systems deal with it better and they therefore have a lower viral load to pass on in the first place.
I don't know. I don't know enough about transmission of diseases to understand this. My guess would be that what my understanding and my guess is that children aren't particularly affected by it, but I would have thought that they're still very capable carriers, hosts for this thing.
Yeah, and we just don't know what to believe, so we're just carrying on anyway and cleaning everything.
Yeah. Super fun.
Living through history, gotta love it.
Indeed. Speaking of history.
So,
unless you want to carry on. Unless you want to keep avoiding the big weight on our shoulders here.